How's it going, everybody? Back again here. Figure it's time I made a video explaining why I'm doing this, why I'm making these videos, and what I hope to achieve with them. So, in order to do that, I need to share my story, my summarized life story, and that kind of lets you know where I'm coming from. And there's a lot of information there that will help explain my motivation for doing this. So my early childhood was pretty good. I don't really have any complaints with the early part of my childhood. My mother was married to my stepdad, and overall was pretty good home for me. They did normal family things, outings, camping trips, things like that. Um, they were very loving to me. They had, I don't know, I don't really know the ins and outs of it, but they had some issues, and it led to a divorce. So after the divorce, I went with my mother. She met another man, and I didn't like this new guy. I don't know how I knew, or maybe it was just something I don't know. I didn't like him. Maybe it was because of the whole divorce thing, and he wasn't my dad, obviously. Um, I was 8 years old when they got divorced, and she met this guy within like 6 months or something. I forget exactly, but shortly after the divorce. Um, I didn't like him. Something was off about him. He didn't like me. There was a mutual dislike between each other. Um, he was very wealthy and was very well off. Knew a lot of people in high places. He employed my mom at multiple different places, and she was the overseer over a few apartment complexes and things like that down in the city that they were at. And they immediately had two children. Um, that's my younger two siblings. Now, they were literally back to back, very, very close to each other. Now, my mother figured out that, or found out, that he was abusing them. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it was not in a good way. Now, of course, her being the good mother that she was, she got very protective, we'll call it. And there was a big fight that broke out. I was there, I witnessed most of it. Now, remind you, I was 11, I think, 10 or 11, maybe 12. I want to say it was about 10 or 11 around that time. And we were out of state, out of our state of normal residence. So, ended up, long story short, cops got called. They both got arrested. All right. Now, me and my younger two siblings, the police, my grandmother showed up from the state above us, and she wasn't able to take us because it was out of the jurisdiction. So they took my younger two siblings and put them into a foster system, I believe is what it was. And they took me, and I guess there was nowhere to put me at the time, so they put me in a group home for troubled young adolescent kids. This is kids that have a lot of behavior issues, um, you know, pyromaniac trying to burn the house down, threatening to kill their parents, running away all the time, trying to steal things, young teenage kids that are just bad kids, or what they deem as bad kids. So, very, very strict situation that I was in there. Had very strict supervised visitations with my mom once she got out of jail, out of the whole, all that stuff was worked out. I forget how long I was there, but it felt like a long time. Probably a few months. Um, After that, I ended up staying with my grandmother, or at my grandmother's house, grandparents' house, I should say. Now, my mom immediately started having a custody battle with my younger sibling's father. And because she was not well connected as he was, and because she didn't have any money, and she had now 4 kids, and being a single mom trying to raise 4 kids, and 2 of them are in the mix of a custody battle, she was working herself to the bone. I was trying my best to be the good big brother and babysit and watch over, but I was only, young teenage years at that time. So did my best to help out. Long story short, she ended up getting hooked on some drugs, and family kind of fell apart. I started doing drugs. I think I was like 13 when I started doing drugs, and I got into some trouble at school. Got into some truancy issues, things like that. That took me out of my mother's custody and put me into my grandparents' custody. Now, I lived at my grandparents for a while. My grandmother and my grandfather were wonderful people. Neither one of them are with us today. My grandfather, when I was living with them, he had a severe decline with Alzheimer's. So that was a really troubling thing for me to witness. Seeing that decline and being so young, I didn't understand it. And it took me a long time to figure out how to process through that kind of stuff. Now, I didn't have a father figure, after my mother's divorce with my stepdad. After that, I didn't have any kind of father figure. I had some uncles, and I don't know what the deal is between my mother and her sisters, but we lived on a large property. Most of us lived on the same property, and none of them were very good at picking very good men to marry or be with. With the exception of one, from what I saw, he was a pretty good man, but that family got hooked on drugs, and he ended up committing suicide. And over the years, I watched that family deteriorate to the point where the wife and the 2 children were on drugs severely, involved in the wrong kind of crowd. My aunt, she passed away. My cousin actually just recently passed away on an overdose right after getting out of jail. And my other cousin is in jail, probably with a life sentence, because he was apparently hanging around the wrong crowd. I don't know. I hadn't talked to him in a long time. So that was kind of hard to watch, because these are cousins I grew up with as a child, and I was very close to them. All of my family. I had a pretty big family. Now, had some trouble in school. Didn't really like school. My early teenage years, I just kind of floated around. My grandmother did her best to watch over me. She had her hands full with all of her kids, and my grandfather's decline, and all of her grandkids, and she just kind of worked herself to death. And she wasn't equipped to properly supervise a young teenage boy such as myself going through all these troubles. So the troubles in school ended up getting me taken out of her custody and put into foster care for a while. That was also troubling. The first couple homes that I went to, I really did not like at all. Had some problems with the foster parents. Ended up getting put into a really nice home. Old Betty and Clarence Dunn. If you are still alive out there, and for somehow, if you see this, I miss you guys, and hope you're doing okay. A wonderful family. They took me in. They took care of me for about a year or so, and that was when I was 17. I remember because when I turned 18, I got released from state custody, and I was out on my own. And that was a pretty hard separation for them because we had grown quite attached. Now, when I turned 18, I transferred high schools, and because of some weird thing with the high school that I was in state custody versus the high school that I transferred back to, they ended up bumping me back like a grade and a half, and something to do with the vocationals not being considered valid credits, or I don't know, whatever it was. Point being is, I was 18. I was like, you know what? I'm not repeating all this. I don't even like this school that I got transferred back to. So I dropped out of school, got a job, and kind of went from there. Kind of just aimlessly went through life, job to job, partied a lot, got really bad on pills and alcohol, and pretty much just trying to escape reality for the longest time. My view on life is that life sucked. I hated it. I had no idea how to make it any better, so I was just trying to escape. And drugs were very effective for that. So I ended up going through this phase of depression for a while, and I don't know, just something just kept telling me, I was like, either something's got to change or there's no point in going on. I'm not going to say I was suicidal or anything, but I mean, those thoughts did pop in my head, like, what's the point? If this is life, and life sucks this bad, what's the point? Why carry on? But it was around that time that a friend of mine, he ended up overdosing, and he had some depression issues and things like that, and I think that was kind of his goal, he was doing the same thing. And it kind of hit me in a weird way, because there was one time that, before this happened, there was one time he showed up at our friend's house. We were all over there hanging out, getting stoned, doing our thing. He shows up, comes in the front door with a gun in his hand, saying that he was about to go in the woods and blow his brains out and end it all. And something about that was like, obviously, no, we're not going to let that happen. But nobody else was willing to go talk to him. It was kind of like, hey, look, y'all ain't going to go, I'm going to go. So I went and talked to him, and that conversation stayed with me for a long time, because ever since then he called me a ray of sunshine, and that thought always stuck with me, because I myself was in a similar bit of depression, and to see that even though I didn't know what I was talking about, I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know what to say, but apparently whatever I said and being positive and encouraging to him was what got him out of that funk at that time. So that was something that was significant. That was the first introduction to how much positive can take place. And I think it was around, or how much positivity can influence people in a negative situation, I should say. It was around that time that my mom ended up losing the custody battle. Now that was like a years and years that was going on. She lost the custody battle, and my younger siblings, they went to their father, and right before then, he ended up passing away. So they got lost to state custody, and they ended up getting adopted out, and I lost contact with them for, I want to say, about 15 years or so. So after that, back to me, I was on my own, and again, let me back up a little bit, because the father examples I mentioned, I didn't have a father figure. The father examples that I did have were my uncles and my grandfather. Those are the closest to a father figure I had. My grandfather, as I said, was going through a pretty rapid decline with Alzheimer's. One uncle had committed suicide. Another uncle was a drug addict thief who was very, very abusive to my aunt, and taught his oldest son to do the same and be the same way. I'm kind of curious to know what kind of person he turned out to be. I haven't heard from him in probably a decade or so. So I did not have very good father figures or male role models in my life growing up. That's that point. But anyway, fast forward again. Was going through that depression stage, working 2 jobs. Ended up quitting doing pills and things like that because I had some pretty close near-death experiences. Wasn't comfortable with that, especially knowing that I had another friend that had overdosed on those. And I don't know, just something had to change. I met a woman who is now my children's mother. I thought that, maybe I could start a family. We were together for a few years, and a few years into it, we got pregnant. We had our first child. Now that first child, having a child for me was a wake-up call. That was one of those, I have a responsibility now, like a serious responsibility. And that's what got me to kind of kick my butt into gear, because I'd tried college and things before, but I just had this bad mentality towards it, bad beliefs, toxic beliefs. I've talked about beliefs and how that can affect your reality and the way you perceive things. So I tried it before. Well, now I have a kid, so now I'm like, okay, I've got to do it. Like, this is something that I've got to do. I've got to get an education of some kind, start a career. Can't be doing this, working fast food chains and construction under the table, getting paid, pennies. So went back to college. We went and stayed at her parents for a while. So went to college up there in Michigan. And that is whenever I got introduced to my first self-development book, which was Mastering the Attitude of Achievement by Lou Tyson. It talked about beliefs and all that. I think that was one of my first videos that I put out. Check it out. How beliefs affect your world, or something like that. So that changed my life. Like, substantially changed my life. It was one of my first paradigm shifts, one of my first epiphanies, first piece of the puzzle that was revealing to me that life could be way better than what it currently was. So fast forward, now I have 3 children with the same woman. Now, a lot of my bad habits and some drug use, smoked a lot of weed, drank a lot of alcohol, things like that, kind of stuck with me. And the lack of knowledge of how to properly conduct myself as a husband and as a father compounded and ended up resulting in a divorce. So now I'm almost 4 years separated. Thankfully, I have learned a significant amount since then. I've cut out all drugs, and 99.999% of alcohol. I rarely ever drink anymore. And it's opened up a whole new clarity for me. So I've been pursuing the route of self-development. I have read and listened to well over 100 or so audiobooks and books on self-development, and I'm continuing to do so. Education is important. That is one of the top 8 domains of life that you should always be working on. So that pretty much brings me to now. So I've learned a lot, read a lot of books, got a lot of knowledge. So now I'm in the phase of trying to figure out how to apply all this knowledge. So that brings us to current day, what I'm doing now. I'm trying to document my progress, and hopefully, if at all possible, anyone out there watching this stuff can maybe see me fumble my way through this, and hopefully maybe I can encourage others that it doesn't matter how bad your life sucks, it doesn't matter how little you think of yourself or how low your confidence is, you can do it. You can make your life better. There are better choices, there's better options. Possibilities are only limited by your imagination and the amount of effort that you are willing to put in. So that's my why. That's why I'm doing this. I'm hoping that maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody else out there sees this, and maybe somebody else out there can say, you know what, if he can do it, so can I. Because I can say with 100% certainty that my life has drastically improved just in the past few years with trying to implement and apply the knowledge that I've learned in a lot of these books. I kick myself often for not trying to apply a lot of this stuff before and just learning it. A friend of mine says, knowledge is not power, knowledge applied is power. A lot of truth in that. So, that's me. That's my life summarized. I'm sure I missed some things, but that's the highlights, if you will. And that's why I'm doing this. If anyone ever has any questions or would ever like to maybe have a podcast of some kind, I'm looking to do that possibly. That would be really neat. I need to get some more equipment. Please feel free to reach out to me. I do read my comments, and I want to be able to help anybody that I can. May not be qualified, but I'm not going to sit idly by and let the world around me crumble if I can do anything at all to help it from doing so. So that's that. And if anyone is watching this, I appreciate your time. I hope you all the best, and I pray that you are blessed with happiness and strength and courage to go forth and conquer. So, thanks everybody. Goodbye.